Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. Today's conversation is really focusing on getting more people, Black people, in the front line. You see the board members, board levels, there are very few, if any, Black members. How do we get them? How do we get them to understand from the very young age they can earn a seat at the table? My guest today, Esther Odejimi-Uzokwe, will be telling us about her own journey and why she felt it is so important that knowledge is started from the very young age, that people are exposed, especially Black kids are exposed from a very young age, and not just exposed, but are also educated, enlightened on what should be done when you're given this opportunity. She is the program director of 10,000 Black Interns, and she'll be talking about her brilliant initiative, whose goal is to help transform the horizon and prospect of young Black people in the United Kingdom by offering paid work experience across a wide variety of industries, as well as world-class training and development. So much pain around this story because it's never easy for a young Black girl to truly get her vision realized. Esther did just that. Meet my wonderful guest, Esther, as she shares her story. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, this conversation really comes back to me. It reminds me of my own journey, of my own life, and how I got started at the investment banking world. My guest today will be telling us about her own journey and why she's so keen to really empower Black people, to get more Black people on, not just in companies, but staying in there to make a real difference. She is the program director of about 10,000 Black Interns. So imagine this, imagine what they do. They are 10,000 Black interns, and we'll be asking her, what difference is this program making? How are they truly making a difference? And how can you watching this show benefit as well? Esther, I am super delighted that you've joined me.
Thank you.
I've been reading all your bio, I've been reading your story, and I just can't help it. I sometimes want to cry, sometimes want to scream from joy, sometimes so excited that I'm not quite sure why. But you have done something so exceptional within your organization. You have utilized your own journey, because your journey has not been something there haven't been any kind of negative in your journey, but it hasn't been that journey of the typical private school, getting to the university you wanted, but you have been consistent on knowing what you want. Before we get started, who is Esther?
Who is Esther? What's the question? Esther, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's obviously a pleasure to be having this conversation with you. Esther is a relatively low-key woman who is East London born and bred, loves the fact that she is East London born and bred, was born in Hackney in Homerton Hospital in 1995, and raised by very traditional Nigerian parents who had come to this country very specifically with the intention to better the lives of the generations to come. So I am the third of 4 children. My 2 older brothers were born in Nigeria. My parents moved over to here. My mum had me here in the UK and had my little sister 14 years later in the UK as well. Esther is state comprehensively educated, literally went to my local primary school, my local secondary school, and as I said, benefited from the consequences of having very traditional parents who take education extremely seriously and don't play when it comes to discipline, faith, and just staying in line in terms of the home. I'm a pastor's daughter. Both my parents are pastors. Grandparents on both sides were also in ministry. So I was raised in the church. And because we were pastors' children, we were raised as the instrumentalists in the church. So everyone in my family plays at least 2 instruments. And yeah, that's who I am. I love acting, I love theatre, I love performance. And I also enjoy the serotonin that you get when you get things done. I love delivering. So that's Esther in a nutshell.
Oh, that's excellent. You are really a lot in a nutshell. To be honest, I think it all stems from your family being that really grounded family. When you look at your background growing up, right? A lot of people who grew up here, especially the Black ethnic minority who grew up in this country, we always have something negative to say or something. Sometimes, very rarely do we get something positive. But when we hear your story is one of inspiration because you talked about it. When I just ask you, who are you? The way you talked about who you are. So, so happy. Tell me about your background growing up. What was it like?
Yeah, do you know what? My background growing up, I look back on it with so much gratitude because one thing that we didn't have as children, and my parents didn't have, particularly when they first moved to this country, is money. We were definitely not of any upper class. We didn't live our lives in any kind of, extravagant way. Money was not in abundance in any way, shape, or form. But the way my parents raised us, it's almost as if we were completely sheltered from that. We didn't know. We didn't really realize that we didn't have much until we would go to school and you have conversations with your friends in the playground and they're saying, oh yeah, like we went to Disneyland, Florida over the holidays. And I stand back and I think, oh, hold on. I've never done something like that. In fact, I've never been on a plane. Like, oh, there's this other life that people are living. But I didn't covet it because one thing that we definitely had at home, because I'm very big on economically, struggling is one thing, but when you have a grounded home that's full of love and full of discipline, it fills your life up in a way money cannot. So we lived a very holistic life in the sense that we were very ingrained in the church community. We weren't the kind of kids that were running around like on the streets in primary school or anything like that, because on a Wednesday we were at the prayer meeting, on a Friday we were at the church service, on a Saturday we were at choir rehearsal, and on a Sunday we were at church the entire day. So there was no time to even understand that there was this whole other life that other people were living,
Yes.
that we were missing out on in any way, shape or form, because we were very happy, we were very grounded. We were just poor. But again, as I say, you don't really realize those things when you come from a home where stability is provided in the absence of money. And that's one thing that I will always, always appreciate my parents for, because one thing they ingrained within us is that nothing in life comes for free, and working hard most of the time equals results, even if there are hurdles in between, even if there are people who try to put caps over your head or glass ceilings over your head. When you push, when you work hard, and when you kick doors down, things get done and your circumstances change. And, these were people who came to the UK with probably £10 equivalent in their pocket. And, I look at them now and they've achieved so much. They've given us so much economically. They've elevated themselves and our entire family. There's no way that I can look at them and think to myself, as someone who was born in this country, that gives you much more than other countries can give you in terms of a starting point. There's no way that I can sit around and, complain all day. No, this is a life where you get things done and you seize the opportunities that are given. And if opportunities are given, you grab them, you run to doors and you kick them open, and you change things for yourself as much as you can. So, yeah, my upbringing was quite happy, actually. But it wasn't in that I say all of that there were challenges, of course. Like one thing that I think was and I'd say it's become more apparent to me in recent years than before, but obviously going into kind of like more sensitive topics, definitely one aspect of my childhood was abuse, not from my family at all, but and it's always from people who are close to your family, right? Who position themselves very strategically such that, your family trusts them and X, Y, and Z. And that's definitely something that I experienced, sexual abuse, just trigger warning for anybody who does listen to this in the future. And that happened very, very early on in my life. But again, when I look back on those times, the grounding, the love, the support I got from my family almost makes it's strange, because I look back on those times and sometimes I have to remind myself that happened to me. And it's like, oh, Esther, you did go through that. That did happen. And it's not from a place of not having dealt with it. It's from a place of having overcome the consequences of it because of the support system that I had in my family, in my immediate family. So it definitely wasn't without its challenges. It wasn't without its drawbacks. But overall, I just give testament to my parents and the fact that they had God and they gave us God, because that's the biggest thing you can have outside of everything.
No, Esther, you're absolutely right there. I mean, you can't contemplate that aspect of having a great family that surrounds you and that actually brings you together, keep you extremely busy, that you forget the outside world, you forget that you don't have to sit home dreaming. Because I think today's world, we focus, so many people focus on social media, focus on dreaming, focusing on wishing. And I think that takes away from the true meaning of what is actually happening. Mine is so inbred that this person is dreaming. And sometimes people know how to make things up. And when you're not even in fantasy world, you're just living in the real world. Nothing else beats that. And that brings me to my question is that, you came from a state school, which is I mean, I heard you, one of your interview where you said your school is like 5 minutes away from where you're home. And then your secondary school was like another, that was another 10 minutes by the bus. So that wasn't too bad. And then you had this dream that you wanted more. You wanted something bigger. Can you tell me how this dream came to reality? What did you do differently?
Yeah, see, that's an interesting story. And again, I have to point it back to my parents, funnily enough. So when you say I had a dream that I wanted more, my mum had a dream that she wanted more for her kids. That's what it was. And I feel like, again, she's a very prophetic woman. So if this woman says something over you, it's going to come to pass. And she was the kind of person that would always say, one of my kids is going to study at Oxford and Cambridge. And I remember Oxford or Cambridge. And I used to look at her and think, can you just relax? Like, come on. Like, to me, it was just, what are you talking about? I went to Grove Primary School. I now go to Oaks Park High School. Dream on. And I remember there was a very specific conversation that actually like flipped a light bulb switch in my head, because another nuance that comes with having parents who are everything to you, like they were my pastors, they were my disciplinarians, they were my providers. So sometimes messages from them can become quite convoluted because you don't have that separation. There's no one outside to even say the exact same thing as them, but just to come from a different perspective that makes you actually realize, when people say you don't realize the value in something someone has said until you're much older and you understand the wisdom. There was an element of that with the dynamic that we had at home, because we didn't have this person who's our pastor, this person who is our provider, and this person who's our disciplinarian. That was all clouded in one person or two people. It meant that there were some things that would kind of go over your head. And the reason I say all of that is to say this, because I remember being in sixth form, and my teacher at sixth form, actually, she was, I think, the only member of staff in the entire school who she had an Oxford degree, and she studied psychology at Oxford many years ago. And my mum knew this, and she was my form tutor at the time. So we had the equivalent of what you would call a parents' evening. And it was at the point where, we were solidifying our A-level options and considering university options. And my mum, as my mum would often do, sat there and said, I want my daughter to study at Oxford or Cambridge. And I was sat right next to her doing the typical defiant teenager thing, like rolling my eyes, like, oh, here she comes again, embarrassing me about all of this Oxford, Cambridge stuff. And my form tutor, with the most serious face, looked me in the eye and said, no, absolutely. That's exactly where Esther should be heading for. And that was one of the key moments that kind of flipped something in my head, because now it wasn't just coming from my mum, who always about actually coming from someone else who I also respected and who knew me from a different lens. My mum knew me as her daughter.
That's correct.
Particular teacher knew me as her student. She knew my capabilities. She knew me academically. And with a very serious face, with not a hint of a smile or a hint of sarcasm, she said, no, absolutely, that's where you should be going. And that was a point in my mind where I was like, oh, hold on, maybe, and she's been there, so she probably knows what kind of person or what kind of capability will thrive in that kind of environment. So that was a kind of light bulb switch in my mind that then made me start thinking more of myself. I always knew that academically I was gifted, like everyone in my family, by the grace of God, has benefited from doing well academically, but in the context of a state school environment. So it's that kind of, you believe in yourself, but you're like, yeah, but you know, there's someone somewhere, there's Eton, there's Lady Margaret Hall, there's all these people who are probably 50 times more clever and all that type of stuff. There's still that kind of self-limiting mentality. But that was the turning point for me. And I remember still not believing in myself completely at that point in time. I said to myself, okay, you get 5 options on your UCAS application. And for those who don't know, UCAS is the means by which students in the UK apply to university, and you choose 5 different university options. So I said, you get 5 options. So what if one of them is overambitious and I don't get in? Like, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. So in the context of that thought process, I decided to apply to Oxford. And lo and behold, I ended up getting an interview, which shocked me. And again, in my mind, I said, it's not going to go beyond this point, but I'll be able to say to my grandchildren, oh, grandma got an interview at Oxford, make sure you take it a step further and get an offer. And then I got an offer. And then I was like, whoa, okay, but I still need to meet these grades. So I'll tell the grandkids, oh, I got an offer, but didn't meet the grades, so make sure you take it a step further. And then ended up getting in. And I was just like, wow, this is really something. And I just looked at my mum and laughed because, as I said, very prophetic woman. Everything she says comes to pass. And it was just another example of how it occurred.
That's a testimony. I'm really proud of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you because I mean, so many people who are in state school, a lot of young girls don't believe that this is their journey, this is their path. They, like you really said, you just said in your school, there was just one teacher who really went to the University of Oxford, and that's something that you didn't think was even possible. But look at you now. You went to University of Oxford, and you have broken big barriers, not because you're the first, but someone who's consistent in talking much about this issue. And when you were at University of Oxford, did it ever occur to you about the difficulty in terms of getting internship in these big corporate organizations? When did you realize that this might be a trouble?
Absolutely. I mean, let's start from the very beginning. I had no idea what an internship even was when I went to Oxford. I'd never even heard of the concept of an internship. And even half of the firms, if not the vast majority of the firms that now as 10,000 Black Interns program director we're partnered up with, I didn't know they existed in my first year of uni. I didn't know what a Goldman Sachs was. I didn't know what McKinsey was. I didn't know any of these firms because I wasn't exposed to those spaces.
Yes.
When we were talking about work experience at my school, everybody, like, the idea of an amazing work experience was working, and no shade at all to people who work in these business streams and these departments, but an idea of a fantastic work experience was having 2 weeks in the PE department of another secondary school. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't know what an internship was. I didn't know what an investment bank was. I didn't know what a consultancy firm was. That wasn't the space I was in. And those weren't the kind of conversations that were had in the kind of environment that I was in. So when I got to Oxford, that's when it kind of opened up a lot of doors of realization for me, because you'll have people having conversations about, you know, their mum or their dad paying X amount to get them a tutor to help them with the McKinsey test, or to help them with the psychometric test for this firm or that firm. And I was like, hold on, what are all these firms? What are you talking about? What's going on? And that's when I also joined the African and Caribbean Society at university, and that exposed me even further to just the corporate world and the world of work, because we were looking for sponsorship and all of the above, and the sponsors that we were looking at and the firms that were coming to us, which was a huge shock to me. Because again, there's that correlation between going to an elite institution and how desirable, quote unquote, you are to all of these big firms in the corporate world. I found that they would come to us because I was a sponsorship and careers officer on the African and Caribbean Society. I'll get emails from all of these big firms talking about, oh, we're really interested in sponsoring your society. Can we take you out for drinks? Can we do this? Can we do that? And that is then when I realized, okay, there's this whole world of things called internships, and you do them particularly in your second year, and they lead to these things called graduate offers, and there are all these industries called investment banking, investment management, consulting, law. You know, it just really, really opened up my eyes, and it genuinely is, and it's a shame that this is the case, but it's a testament to the environment that I was in at Oxford. And again, I'm sure that many people, particularly many Black people, would probably echo my experience and note that that university is the thing that kind of opened their eyes to these things called internships. And let's be clear, a lot of my white counterparts had already secured internships. They had already done work experience at all these big places. Their dad was the COO of this place and that place. So they had early access to these conversations and early access to these opportunities. And internships make a whole world of difference, because by the time I now started applying in my second year, I didn't have the nuggets to success, because there are unwritten rules in terms of the way you write applications, how you answer, how to pass tests and all that type of stuff. There are unwritten rules to which I didn't have the playbook for. And yeah, I struggled because I came across it late. But you know, we thank God all is well now. But you know, part of our program is to ensure that every Black student across the UK has access to these life-changing opportunities, which are internships. They genuinely can be life-changing, particularly when you can engage with them at an early point in your career, because they can tell you what you want to do, and even equally importantly, what you don't want to do. Being able to experiment young helps you direct your career earlier.
Absolutely. And in 2015, you started this organization, which is Open Palm.
Yeah.
And in that Open Palm, your focus on this was really to get state comprehensive educated students into Oxford, Cambridge, and Russell Group institution.
Yeah.
Before I go into what you currently do now, what led you on this path about that you decided to found this organization?
Yeah, it's a lot of what I've described, to be honest. So I got to Oxford and I specifically studied at Pembroke College, Oxford. And I really, really struggled. I struggled because, going back to my background, East London, born and bred, you can imagine what my classrooms looked like. Loads of people that look like you and me, and loads of people that look like our siblings, you know, your family members.
Family, our aunties, our uncles, all of that, yeah.
Exactly, very mixed. And you did not feel like you stuck out in terms of being in a minority at all. I now get to Oxford and I studied Theology and Religion. I was the only Black person on the entire undergraduate course. At the beginning, there was one other girl who decided that, you know, Oxford wasn't for her and decided to drop out. So I then became the only person. And when I say the entire undergraduate course, I mean across all 3 year groups of the undergrad, I was the only Black person, not Black woman, Black person on the entire degree. Every time I was in a lecture hall, every time I was doing a seminar, every time I was in a tutorial, I've never felt so Black in my life. I just felt so Black. And the same went for my college, so Pembroke College. In my year group, there was another Black guy who unfortunately decided to drop out as well. So I then became the only Black person on my campus in my year group as well. And there was another name floating around. There was somebody else who was in their second year, but was taking a gap year because her degree was a study abroad degree. So physically on campus, there was just nobody else. And yeah, I really struggled with that because I had no experience of ever being in those kinds of spaces. And let's be frank, white humor is not the same as Black humor.
No.
The white experience is not the same as the Black experience. Where am I going to get my hair done? Who's going to do my cornrows? Where can I buy plantain? All these kinds of things that really inform the Black experience and you take for granted when you're around your own people.
Yes.
All of a sudden became hyper important to me. I was like, oh my goodness, it felt like an identity crisis. Yeah. And again, because of other experiences that I'd had, particularly when I joined the African and Caribbean Society and I started being exposed to what we've already discussed, things like internships and the way firms even spoke to us and dealt with us by virtue of the fact that we just went to that university full stop. I started to realize that there was a massive and unfortunate correlation between where you study and what your prospects are post-graduation.
Yes.
And again, I started to look at the world of work and I looked around, did an internship with Lloyd's Banking Group, which was amazing. But I remember looking around and thinking, there are very few people that look like me. And the ones that do look like me are very junior.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big problem for me. And then I thought to myself, okay, if we're going to get more Black people into industry leading, world leading positions, whether we like it or not, we need to understand how to play the game. And the game, there is a strong link between having a strong educational background and doing well post-education. So that's where Open Palm it rose out of that frustration. I was like, look, we need to get more Black people into universities like this, whether we like it or not. It will be a difficult ride. You'll feel horrible sometimes. You'll feel like you stick out, but ride the wave, play it smart, and do what we need to do, because you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. So Open Palm came out of that, and our sole intention was to get more diverse candidates into the pipeline of Oxford and Cambridge. So what we did is went into state comprehensive schools. Our first partner was actually my former school. And because since I got into Oxford, nobody else had got into Oxford or Cambridge after me. So went back, brought Open Palm into the picture, and thank God from that point on, people started getting in off of the back of the program. So that was our kind of first indicator of success. And then we realized actually sometimes the pipeline needs to start much younger, particularly when you look at the stats. Black Caribbean boys, if you don't engage them from primary school, in some cases, you've lost them in the pipeline. Because we look at the stats, even with the work I'm doing now, the participation of Black Caribbean students in higher education is much lower than the participation of Black African students. So with Open Palm, we went to primary schools and we started working with Black students in primary school as well. And funnily enough, we found similar dynamics. We'll go in, we'll have sessions with Black students. We went to a particular school in Stoke Newington, and there were 3 Black girls in a year 6 class. And apparently they were the only 3 who were badly behaved. Apparently they were the only 3 who were underperforming academically. And they were the only 3 who were at risk of being kicked out of primary school. Got into this school, started doing workshops with them. Lo and behold, a huge change. They started performing. Their performance increased by 2 academic years. They all passed their SATs. They all transitioned into secondary school very, very well and with ease. And by the grace of God, they're all doing fantastically well now, and they're much older. And I feel like they're my children. Like it's just crazy.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, but the work, it has to start young, but it came out of the frustrations at Oxford for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful, because I mean, listening to your story, you are not just someone who lives it, but you try and help others who might be going through it to make sure they understand. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to Goldman Sachs? How did you end up getting into Goldman?
Yeah, funny. That's a funny question. So with Goldman, again, because I was in a space like Oxford and I got exposed to all of these new industries, investment banking, consultancy, all that type of stuff, there are certain conversations that everybody has in those spaces. And for everyone, the target is always banking, consulting, or law. You're kind of not exposed to anything else. So crudely, for me, it was about the money. I was like, where can I learn the most, the quickest, and get paid the most? Those were the 3 factors for me. I don't describe myself as the most technical person, particularly back then. Like I'd always studied qualitative subjects as opposed to quantitative. I had this kind of fear of maths that I wanted to kind of explore and go deeper in. So I put in applications to a bunch of firms and ended up getting into Goldman, to be honest. And honestly, it's purely because that's what everybody did at that point in time. If I could wind the clocks back, would I have done something differently? I don't know, perhaps, maybe if I had more information at my disposal. But with the information I had, that's where I felt I would learn the most and learn the quickest. And that was the case. I learned extremely quick in that space, spent just under 2 years there, and then transitioned into entrepreneurship and then into the role I'm doing now. But yeah, it was a wild time. It was a very wild time, learned crazy amounts in a very short space of time. But yeah, my journey to Goldman was one of, this is what everybody does. Yes. But yeah, I quickly found out that actually I'll probably thrive a lot more in a different space.
Yeah. Now, so we're going on to your program where you are the program director. And this is a 10,000 Black interns, right? And the reason I really wanted to talk to you as a Painless co-founder is just because this is also my journey. This has not been easy for myself, and being a black woman. I know it's someone they classify as someone disabled because I have sickle cell anemia. So I've always struggled with, I did go to the schools, but school was not really my strong point because I just, I never could. I would always have to take my exams in hospital. Then I ended up going to Cass Business School, which is now called Base Business School. And during that, something popped up, internship. I wasn't worried about being Black. I wasn't worried about being a woman. I was worried about my disability. Who would actually take me in? Because can I do the job? Would I always be in hospital to do the job? And luckily, when this thing popped up, it gave me that opportunity, that unique window of being able to apply for something where they coach the organization on how you are accepted in your workplace, how they perceive you, how if you need someone to shadow you in case you're sick.
Yeah.
So that was my own issue. But
Yeah.
that internship, that program helped me to get this role, because I don't think anyone would have taken me. And now you have this program, and I'm so proud that there's something out there like that, because people think, oh, it's just a program. And I say to people, it is not just a program. My program was 10 weeks, just for 10 weeks. But in that 10 weeks, I worked my hardest. I gave it my all. They ended up giving me the job. I ended up getting a full-time contract from the 10 weeks. So it's an opportunity for anyone, Black, women, disability, to shine. Can you tell me a little bit about your program and how you got started in this field?
Absolutely. So the program is called 10,000 Black Interns. And I'll start with the name. So we were initially called 100 Black Interns.
Oh.
I'll split my explanation into the number and Black. So we have a great group of co-founders, most of them who actually work in the investment management industry and have been in the investment management industry for, quite frankly, longer than I've been alive. Yeah. And they, off of the back of the murder of George Floyd, I think that sent a huge shockwave across the world, and in particular across industry. People who had been dragging their feet about, diversity and inclusion, or people who had been putting out all of these empty statements about their devotion to diversity and inclusion, but still had a boardroom full of middle-aged, bold white men and, investment floors full of, white men, were really forced to self-evaluate. So off of the back of that, the co-founders launched what at the time was called 100 Black Interns, and the focus was in the investment management industry, because as an industry, on the face value, it was really, really behind and really elite in its hiring practices as well. And the concept was really simple: to get 100 investment management firms to sign up to a program. And what they were essentially signing up to do was to hire one intern each, hence the number 100, so 100 Black Interns, and all of them had to be Black. So, and this is Black, we're not talking BME, because a lot of firms, organizations hide behind this cloud term of Black and minority ethnic group, which basically means everybody who isn't white. And they end up hiring a bunch of South Asian people who, according to the data, do very, very well academically and do very, very well in terms of the space that they occupy in the corporate world and in, in leading industries. I mean, look at our cabinet, for example. Any Black people there?
No.
Nope. BME people? Yeah.
Oh, now there's a Black, but there are 2 Black people now. Our the business secretary.
Okay, well,
yeah. Now they're improving that as well. I think thanks to you, this is improving, and this is an ongoing dialogue that's happening.
Yeah. But even if we look at the top job, like Chancellor of the Exchequer, the PM, BME for sure, but Black, no. So this is how a lot of people will say, yeah, we're doing really well. We've got X amount of BME people in high positions. But then when we say, okay, but how many of them are Black? Then everybody goes silent. Mm-hmm. So the intention of the program was to remove the B out of BME. And we're going to focus on the B. We're going to focus on Black. And so, we signed up 100 investment management firms. Well, we aimed to sign up 100 investment management firms, ended up with 200 of them. Put about 50 of them on a waiting list, so we had about 250 firms on our roster. Opened up applications to students, and we expected to get maybe a couple of hundred applications at the time. Ended up getting 2,500 applications from Black students across the country who were interested in a career in investment management. And to be clear, our eligibility criteria from a candidate perspective was that you had to be Black, you had to be studying at any UK university across any year group. So we were not focusing on elite institutions like other programs that are out there. We said, wherever you go, whether it's a university that's number 100 on the university list or number 1 on the university list, apply. There's space for you.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Go on.
Across any year group. So traditionally, internships are for second years and final years. But we said, look, if you're a first year, apply. If you are doing a postgrad degree and you're in the first year of a 5-year PhD, apply. As long as you're a student and you're Black, wherever you're studying, apply. So yeah, we ended up getting 2,500 applications when we only expected to get a couple of hundred. And at the end of the day, to cut a long story short, where we had initially intended to place 100 interns into investment management in year one, we ended up placing 502 interns into internships across investment management and a couple of other sectors in our first year. And when I say our first year, that's last year, 2021. And then we morphed off of the back of that from 100 Black interns into 10,000 Black interns. And the idea behind 10,000 Black interns is pretty similar, except we're now no longer just working with investment management. We're now in partnership with 24 different sectors. And amongst those 24 different sectors, it represents about 600 to 700 different firms. And we're talking from your biggest firms, your biggest players in the game, to the middle players in the game, to the smaller size companies who, they have a workforce of 5, but they're dedicated to making sure that, they have interns and that they're diverse candidates and they're increasing their diverse pipeline. So that 10,000 number is actually aggregated over the course of 5 years. So we have a yearly target of delivering 2,000 internships each year across 24 different sectors. This year, we received close to 11,000 applications to the program. We're in the thick of the recruitment process as we speak, and we're working very steadily towards our 2,000 target. As we speak, we've got about 1,700 offers, internship offers under the program. So we're very nearly there. We've got about a month to go to bridge the rest of the gap. So that's the program in a nutshell. And we also offer pre-internship training, mentorship, all of the above, because we understand that in order for an intern to be successful, you need to give them resource beyond just the initial opportunity.
Yes.
They need to know the unwritten rules of success. They need to know what the culture is like. And also from a firm perspective, they need to understand what it takes to retain Black talent, because there are firms who they know how to get a Black person through the door, but they don't know how to make the Black person feel welcome enough for them to even accept an offer in the first place.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a very holistic program, and that's essentially what we're here to do.
Oh, congratulations. I'm really proud that you are part of this initiative, because without you in there, without your own personal experiences, about your personal journey, I don't think the matching would actually quite fit work. Because what you just said was something I was going to ask you about, but you've already addressed it, about them being in there, but the culture not being right, because you're giving opportunities not just to someone who's from university number 1, but someone who's university 100, and someone who's from university 100 probably has not got the exposure that the person in university number 1 has exposed. So he gets in there, he has this wonderful opportunity. Rather than make the best out of it, it becomes a disaster for him. And then the employee said, look, I told you these people are like this.
Yeah.
Because these people are like this, and I told you we shouldn't hire them. But not knowing it's just because of culture fit. They're almost similar to what you experienced at university, not having the basic of things we're used to, plantain, when you say those words, just basic things like that, that makes a shift in perspective of how a Black person would think, but changing that mindset. So I'm so glad you're doing that. Now, my final question is that you've seen this going on. What is your message? What is your hope to a young Black boy, girl out there who's sitting there thinking to themselves, oh, it can't be done. She's just talking. It's never going to be me. She was just one of those lucky ones that they waved the magic wand and boom, she got her wish. And probably her mom did some magic thing and waved her mom. And then she got her wish and then it what happened. What is your message to someone out there, a young Black person?
My message to them is that look at the company you respect the most, whatever it may be and for whatever reasons. Go on their website, look at their senior leadership team, look at what those people look like. They're not going to look like you, but you need to sit there, look at those pictures, look at those names and understand that as long as you utilize the resource that is given to you by programs like 10,000 Black Interns, as long as you work hard, as long as you're defiant, as long as you are resistant to opposition, because one thing I can absolutely promise the young Black boy or the young Black girl that is probably going to watch this is that there will be resistance. I can promise you. Life does not come without that resistance. And whether we like it or not as a Black person, that resistance is on steroids. But it's possible to work past it. And it's possible for you to see your picture and your name in the exact same place as the CEO, the CFO that you are looking at today. In the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it could be your face there. It should be your face there, in fact. And we're here to help that become a reality. Because one of the key frustrations about this program is that currently there are no Black CEOs or CFOs of any FTSE 100 company. Zero, just doesn't exist. That needs to change. And it's programs like this that's going to help that change. So suck the bones out of this life. Don't let anybody sit there and say to you, you can't do this, you can't go there, you can't do that. There are so many points in my life. Use me as an example. I went to a state comprehensive school. I remember the head of higher education at my school refused to put my predicted grades up for my A-levels in order to allow me to apply to Oxford or Cambridge. I sat in a room with him and literally got face to face with him and said, sir, put my grades up, otherwise we will have an issue. I'm going to apply to Oxford. And his response to me was, yeah, but the statistics show that X, Y, Z. I interjected and I said, I'm not a statistic. My name is Esther. I'm going to put the work in and you're going to put my grades up so that I can apply. And I forced him to do so. No one, you can't expect to walk through life and have things handed to you. People are going to resist. People are going to try and tell you no. But you need to be the kind of person who essentially, to a certain extent, I understand that things don't map out in the same way for everybody. But to a certain extent, as much as we can, we need to write our own destiny and not let anybody be an external factor to deny you of opportunity as far as we can help it. You know, people who tell you no, tell them yes. If they close the door, kick it down. I promise you, it takes you much further in life than just walking through this life passively and letting other people define your journey. So that's my advice to the young Black boy, the young Black girl. Seize this life, suck the bones out of it, because you only get it once.
As you heard, her name is Esther. Take it from her. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate your work. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you're doing for the Black men and Black women out there. Keep it up and good luck with everything. Thank you.